How much margin should I be looking for?
There's a bit of a difference between if you're selling an item for £10 versus, say, £200. If you've got to make all of your margin on that one sale, you need that margin on that one sale to be close to what your final margin target is.
I mean, some categories require way more advertising budget, right? This company went from 0 through to $1 million a year. Their accountant kind of flagged up, we're making a loss.
So much goes into branding
and advertising. Hey squad, quick side note, we know that more than 80% of you are not subscribed. The more people who subscribe, the more content we can create for you. And the happier we'll be here. Hey team, welcome to Upside, the podcast where we talk about all things marketplace. Now we often get asked, I want to start a business, I want to get on Amazon or get on another marketplace. How much margin should I be looking for? Well, this is what we're talking about today. And short answer, little hint, it depends. So margin is super important when you are selling online, especially in an Amazon business. This, as we often argue, is it's kind of getting eroded in many ways. And so we want to know what is the ideal margin you should be looking for, or what's at least the minimum that you should be looking for when you're selling. And it genuinely does depend on what's going on here. So we want to kind of talk through those little factors, what to consider in all of this and what those nuances. But before we begin, I think it's important to just explain what do we mean by margin? What are people kind of getting wrong? Because I think that's one of the things that's starting place.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Well. I mean, the biggest mistake we see is people forgetting to add in certain costs, right?
Yeah.
And if you want an accurate view of margin,
yeah,
you need to make sure you've listed and detailed all of your costs, including, and this is a mistake a lot of small businesses make, yourself, your time, your energy.
Okay, fine. So if we wanted to kind of like almost make it formulaic, what are some like rough headings you should be putting in? Let's say you open up your Excel spreadsheet and you start putting in.
All right, so the really easy ones, right, are going to be all of your Amazon selling fees or platform selling fees. They're pretty straightforward to calculate as well.
Yep.
Because they generally get deducted straight up anyhow, and ahead of time there's a price list.
All right, so there's three of them generally, right? So
if you're on Amazon, there's three, yeah.
There's three. So you're going to have your referral fee, you're going to have your FBA fee if you use FBA, and you're going to have a storage fee if you use Amazon storage. Mm-hmm. Those are three Amazon costs. Okay, cool. Yep. And by the way, if you want a spreadsheet to help you calculate what those will be, get in touch and we'll share that out with you. But fine. So there's the Amazon costs.
Yeah. And then your cost of goods sold, COGS, often referred to.
Yes. So there's your COGS.
And right. Again, this correct?
Is important, right? Yeah. So what goes into your COGS?
Every single cost required to get that product into an Amazon fulfillment center.
Or your own
fulfillment center.
Or your bedroom, wherever it is, right? So we often talk about as the cost to produce the product, get it made, shipped over to your fulfillment center, whether it's your bedroom or Amazon or wherever it is that you're going to be storing the product. And that includes, forgive the T word, tariffs, any duties, freight costs, your shipping from the port through to your fulfillment center, all those little costs, those are all kind of factored in and put into what we call COGS, your cost of goods sold.
In fact, there's only one cost there that you don't count in most cases, and that's any VAT you pay when you land the item, assuming that you're VAT registered, because you do get to claim that back. So,
all right, cool. So you got your Amazon fees, you've got your COGS. Mm-hmm. What are the other ones?
The really big one that you need, it's much harder to quantify at the beginning, is advertising.
Yeah. Okay, so you have your advertising costs as well. General rule of thumb, what do we say for people who are starting out versus people who are established?
And this is talking from a budget perspective. We say whenever you're launching, be willing to spend somewhere between 30 and 50% of your target revenue on advertising for those first few weeks.
Yeah.
With that kind of ratcheting down from 30 to 20 to maybe 15% in your first 6 months.
Right. And we say that's a huge window, 30 to 50%. And that's simply because some categories require more advertising or a bit more competitive, or your strategy might be very aggressive. So based on the aggression levels in your category, you may need to have more kind of peak, like kind of get closer to 50. But realistically, you need to be kind of getting that down to about 10 to 15% once you're more established.
Yeah, and this is all very general rule of thumb at the moment.
Rule of thumb. So. But if you're kind of working it out, this will give you a rough thing to kind of work off.
Yeah.
Cool. What else have we got in there?
You need to also quantify, and this is coming to margin rather than just simply looking at it at a unit level, any other overheads that you have. So you've got to have a figure for that kind of laid in as an annualized figure that then you break down.
Right. And then so all of that is you sum up all of that and you deduct it from your selling price or your revenue, and that is going to give you your margin.
You take your revenue, take your VAT off of it again, because we work on everything ex VAT. So if you have VAT, you need to exclude that amount, and that leaves you with your net figure, and that gives you. And again, we're talking, there are two parts as we will talk. There's your gross margin and your net margin.
Okay,
So
let's go through it. What's gross margin? What's net margin?
generally, operating costs are in there for gross margin. Those overheads I was talking about,
Yeah.
those would be deducted afterwards, and they take you from gross margin to net margin.
Okay.
And the reason you split those out is so that you can, because ultimately you want to understand the cost per unit. And so anything that's really sitting at cost per unit, i.e. cost of manufacturing, handling that unit all the way through to selling that unit, that sits in that gross margin category. And for net, you deduct those are more fixed overheads that doesn't really depend on how many units went through.
So we've essentially talked about three types of margin within one little concept there. So we've got your general margin. So this is like your revenue minus your basic costs.
Yeah.
Then you've got your gross margin, which is going to be your revenue minus your general costs minus your operating
And advertising fees.
costs. And then you can have your net margin, which is all of the above deducted from your...
Yeah, so that's everything. So that's going to be like, say, if you have office space and utility bills, your business insurance, your accountancy fees, all of those get built into those that come off of your gross margin and go into your net margin.
And so when people say to us, what level of margin should we be looking for? First question is, what type of margin are we talking about? That's the first bit. And then the second part is kind of more nuanced, which is around the categories and the other bits that we want to get to. All right. So I think it's worth saying we're going to come back to with the rough rule of thumb that you can use for at least some of your margins that we discussed a second ago. But then we've kind of like alluded to it now. What are some of these nuances as well that it depends?
So I think it depends on what price you're selling the product at. Yes, there's a bit of a difference between if you're selling an item for £10 versus, say, £200.
Yeah.
As to what margin you would be targeting. There's also makes significant differences whether or not there is a lifetime value you can attach to the product or some sort of brand value. That's where someone might not buy the same product again for themselves, but might buy it for someone else as a gift, or might buy something else from your range for themselves. Yeah. So there's some value that can be associated to the brand. And the third one's a real lifetime value, where it's something that someone will buy regularly, probably once a month on average. Coffee's a really good example.
Okay, fine. So that's some of the nuances on that side of it.
And the reason we bring that up is
when it comes to selling point.
Yeah, and this is coming back to that initial line, that operating line. For when you're selling a single unit, if you've got to make all of your margin on that one sale, you need that margin on that one sale to be close to what your final margin target is. Whereas if you've got a brand that you're pushing, you know that there's some brand value associated to it, or if there's a lifetime value, then we start talking about cost of acquisition. And what we're saying there is, look, we might tolerate making zero margin or negative margin on the first purchase,
knowing they'll come back on,
knowing that we're going to make up future sales to that.
Printers and printer cartridges.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So that makes sense. What are some other factors as well to keep in mind? So one was the selling price. What else? Category. I mean, some categories require way more advertising budget, right? So I mean, like if you're selling cosmetics or like beauty related products, or energy drink, those are ones that we know you have to invest way more margin in.
So I was going to say, so this really comes to a point. There are 2 points built into this, right?
Yes.
One is,
I know where you're going.
How much of the revenue are we going to associate to advertising?
Yeah.
Right? And how competitive is it? So this isn't so much a target margin question as much as a timing question, right? You may have a very clear idea on the target margin you're hitting. The question is, when do you need to hit it by? Another point we talk about quite frequently when it comes to margin is break-even points. And it's the idea that, okay, when I'm not going to hit my target margin in week 1, when am I going to hit it? Is it going to be in month 3? Is it going to be in month 6, month 12? And then finally, that definition of break-even. Are we saying break-even in terms of I finally get to a month where I've not lost any money? Or am I also trying to compensate for all the investment I've made in the first few
Which
weeks?
is actually a real life thing, because we had this scenario come up with one of the brands.
We have it multiple times. We had this one glaring.
Yeah, this one, I mean, this company went from 0 through to $1 million a year, and their accountant kind of flagged up. They were like, oh, like, we're making a loss.
Yeah, this was about 6 months in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, we're making a loss. And they had looked at the entire 6-month period and taken it and said, we've lost money, we should stop doing this.
Yeah.
And what we did is we went in and said, oh, hold on a second. Actually, this has been a journey, right? So we lost money in month 1, 2, 3, and 4, but we're losing less money across those first 4 months.
Yeah.
And by month 5, we're broken even. And by month 6, we're making a profit.
Yeah.
So what's happened here is you've invested, and yes, if you look at it as a lump, that whole period, you've lost money. But by breaking it down and looking at over the 6 months,
you can see a trend line.
It tells you the story of what's really happening. The fact you've just made this investment. And if an accountant makes a decision got to make the decision, they would have cancelled the project. It's like, once we spoke founder to founder on this, it was a very different conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that whole thing around, like, if you leave now, basically, yes, you will actually make a loss. But if you keep going, this is going to be a really profitable business. Now over $1 million a year.
And making a very strong margin, though, 20% plus.
20% plus. And that's net margin.
That was net margin.
Respect. That's so good. Rules of thumb. Let's go through some of these kind of like rules of thumb margins, right? Because if you're coming into this, how much margin should you be making? All right. Your general retail margin, like just off the back of just your revenue minus your basic Amazon costs.
And again, this comes back to that one question you always love, which is, well, are you talking about full retail price or your discounted price or your blended price?
Let's go through that. Well, but let's just, to simplify it, I don't want to complicate this kind of like this part of it.
Okay.
But generally, what's the rough margin you want to be having?
I think we are comfortable with anything that's 30% plus at this point. Net margin.
Right. So this is your basic retail margin. You want to be at least
your gross margins.
Because what that's going to enable you to do is you'll be able to run promotions, run some advertising, still have some money left over. This is where 10%, 15% came in, and still have money left over to feed yourself and grow your business. So minimum 30. And if you're in a competitive space with lots of advertising, you're going to be looking at least 40 to 50 or higher.
Okay, yeah.
And I think like beauty brands, they generally look for around 60 to 70%.
Yeah. Because so much goes into branding.
And advertising.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And then, but when we come to like net margin, so this is when all the costs are factored in as part of the business. Because what makes it hard, and I just want to kind of say this other point, which I've almost forgot, is if Amazon or online is your only distribution channel versus if you've got other distribution channels as well, where some of those operating costs are spread over, right? That's going to be a factor. But as your business, what are we looking at? What would we say is good?
I think realistically speaking, 15% is probably a really strong margin.
I have heard of people trying to get to like 20, 25s, but that's super good, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, to be fair, we've spoken to brands that probably, they've been up to 40%. But I would say that tends to be very rare and often whenever they have a strong brand that they've managed to build over years of investment.
Yeah. So for all those people who are looking to start and you often ask, or you ask us, what kind of margin should I be looking for? That's generally what we say. It's going to be
15% after VAT. So
with everything, all the factors coming in. But when you're just doing your general, just Amazon high level margin, we're looking at minimum 30%.
Which is a really good point, because if you're looking at setting up a business where you're running a business and you're like, what am I going to get to take out of this at the end of the year? Then you know what that total revenue needs to be to hit your number. Yeah. So what's 15% of that total number, and are you satisfied with that?
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Will that get you out of bed?
Yeah. Thank you for talking profit with me.
Oh yeah. Profit's the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so thanks guys. If there's any other questions on this, shout out, reach out. We get asked it all the time and we're happy to help. Cool. Much love.
One love.